And so we begin. This is kind of where we were writing stuff down the other day. Jordan has found her spot right here. This is where we're existing. Everybody got it? Okay. So what we want to do is we want to find values of 6 trigonometric functions given this following information. Too often, I get this for an answer on the test, at which point I write down your name and I make a phone call home to parents and say, I don't think you should go to college. Okay? ZZ doesn't think I've actually done it before.
I'd say that.
Yeah, it is funny, isn't it? It isn't funny, though, when I do it. I haven't had to do it for a while. It's probably been about 7 years, but I have made that phone call home before. So, nobody, they're embarrassed. One time I had parents say, really, I know my child is just, they're way too confused in your class. Like, they just can't do that. And I said, well, how about I meet with you? And I said, I bet you'll understand in 35 seconds. And when they can do it in 35 seconds, that's when they get mad at their kid. So ready to avoid the phone call home?
Yeah.
All right, let's avoid the phone call home. So the first thing I'll do is I'll write sine of t, cosine of t, and tangent of t. And then I write cosecant of t, secant of t, and cotangent of t. Anybody confused with how I came up with that information? Okay. It says find 6, so we found all 6. Okay. Now I want to know what all 6 of these are equal to. Does anybody know something I could write down right now? Sine is -4/5. So when people don't even write down -4/5, do you understand why I should be outraged? Okay. At this point, I still call home. You got to get yourself another point. What other point should they get? They get 5/4. So you guys have learned nothing else with the rest of the unit, and you already have 2 out of 6 points on the test. So understand when people write IDK and don't write anything, should I question whether or not they could survive college? I think it's a legitimate concern. We all good? All right. So now some people, they write that down, and then they don't know what to do the rest of the way. They take their 2 out of 6, which will basically reduce your grade by 1 grade, because that's 4 points you got off. On, say, a 40-point test, that's 10%, right? So let's say you're like, I don't want to drop from A to a B or a B to a C right away. How do I get my other points, Mr. Gens? Simple. We're going to use what we did the other day. We'll write down a few things. Sine squared of theta plus cosine squared of theta is equal to what? 1. Most important formula of all trigonometry. I give that to you on the test, but let us never forget it. Another one, I have 1 plus tangent squared of theta is equal to secant squared of theta. That was another formula. We said that's really important. We're going to try to remember that. We did another one that I said I don't use this as much, and I don't use it as much. 1 plus cosecant squared of theta is equal to cotangent squared of theta. Again, this is simply a summary of what we did on Friday. We also said that tangent of theta is equal to what? Oh. Yeah.
The one plus, is it cosine squared?
Oh, I'm sorry. Very sorry. Thank you. It was supposed to be 1 plus cotangent squared of theta is equal to cosecant squared of theta. Sorry about that. Good catch. And finally, we said tangent of theta is equal to sine of theta divided by cosine of theta. We also talked about where the trig functions were positive and where they were negative. Do you remember which ones were positive in the first quadrant? All of them. So sine of theta, cosine of theta, and tangent of theta, all positive in the first quadrant. you remember which one was positive in the second? Sine of theta was positive in the second. Remember which one was positive in the third? Tangent was positive in the third. And do you remember what was positive in the fourth? Cosine of theta. And thus, all students take calculus can be the same by which we remember that. Okay? All right. So, I had that information. I currently know that sine is negative 4 over 5. Cosecant is negative 5 over 4. Does anybody have a thought of what I could do to try to find out another one of those values? I'm going to use this first formula. Sine squared plus cosine squared is equal to 1. If I plug in negative 4 over 5 and square it, I should be able to figure out cosine, shouldn't I? What is negative 4 over 5 squared? 16 over 25 plus cosine squared of theta is equal to 1. So all I did is I plugged in the sine value and I squared it. When you square something, please always write it as a positive. It would only be imaginary numbers that you square and get a negative. That we're not going to be doing with that. I'm going to rewrite the 1 to be 25 over 25 so I have a common denominator. I will subtract cosine squared of theta is equal to 9 over 25. I square root it. I get cosine of theta is equal to positive or negative 3 over 5. Have a conversation with the person around you, people around you. Tell me, should it be positive 3/5 or negative 3/5 and why? Talk. Go. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What do you guys have? Positive or negative?
Negative.
It is negative. It is a negative 3/5. For those of you who are asking why, it's because we were told we're working in the third quadrant. And as you know, in the third quadrant, tangent's positive. The other ones are negative. So we know it's negative 3/5. If I know cosine is negative 3/5, then secant is negative 5/3. All of a sudden, we move from 2 points to 4 points. Let's get the last set of points. In order to get the last points, we have to determine tangent. We have this handy-dandy formula. Tangent is sine divided by cosine. And so we can take our sine value divided by our cosine value. Negative 4 over 5 divided by negative 3 over 5. Instead of dividing, I can multiply by the reciprocal. Fives cancel. The positive or the negatives cancel. I get 4 over 3. And so cotangent is 3 over 4. What do you think? Wasn't too bad, right? Piece of cake upside down. We'll give it a shot. You don't know where the reference is from, do you? Piece of cake upside down. All right. I'll just teach you someday. It's a movie. Super famous movie. Stand and Deliver. All right. Watch it. It's a good one. You'll like it. Promise. Won a lot of awards. I took you through the first one. You helped me through the second one. Sine of t, cosine of t. And t is just a variable. It can be interchanged with theta, something else. You help me. Where do I start? Cosecant is negative 2. Sine is negative 1/2. Everybody good with my start? So I'm now going to set up sine squared of theta plus cosine squared of theta equal to 1. What do you get if you square negative 1/2? 1/4 plus cosine squared of theta is equal to 4/4. I have cosine squared of theta is equal to 3/4. Cosine of theta is equal to the square root of the top. I have the root of 3. And the bottom, I have positive 2. And it is plus or minus. See if you can determine with your peers right now, is it going to be positive root of 3 over 2 or negative root of 3 over 2? A little bit more complicated this time. Take about 45 seconds. See what you can come up with for a thought. Go.
It says this one is for sure negative because it's below 0. So that means that this one is another.
Okay, heard some interesting reasoning. I'm going to explain my reasoning first, and we'll take you through Erin's reasoning. She's right as well. Let's glance at this, though. Notice how you're not given a quadrant here, are you? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to determine the quadrant, and I'm going to use some information that I've been given. I'm going to start with this information. Is sine positive or negative? So therefore, sine is positive in which quadrants? 1 and 2. So it's negative in 3 and 4. So this piece of information there tells me I must either be in the third quadrant or the fourth quadrant. Are we okay with that? All right, now I'm going to move on to my second piece of information. Cotangent is less than 0. What does it mean to be less than 0? So we know that cotangent and tangent are negative. Okay? Tangent is positive in which quadrants? First and third. It's negative in the second and fourth. So tangent is negative in the second and fourth quadrant. Notice how they overlap right here, don't they? So therefore, I am working in quadrant number 4. Okay, fourth quadrant. So as you consider cosine, whether it's positive or negative, is cosine positive or negative in the fourth quadrant? It's positive. Okay, so I have the root of 3 over 2. Now, this is another good way to think about it. Like what Erin said, she said, well, I know that tangent is negative. Everybody okay there? And she said sine divided by cosine is tangent. So what would you take a negative and divide it by to get another negative? You'd have to take a negative divided by a positive to get a negative, right? And that works as well. I want you to understand the quadrant piece because it will come up later on where we need to do that same piece. The positive negative division piece works here. Sometimes it might not, but those are excellent ways to see it all the time. The other way to see it is that they'll either all be positive or just 2 will be positive and 4 will be negative. You're never going to have a situation where they'll all be negative. You know what I mean? Okay. All right, so we have root of 3 over 2. So what do I do to get secant? Flip it. So I have 2 over the root of 3 or 2 roots of 3 over 3. We're almost done. How do we get tangent? negative 1/2 divided by root of 3 over 2. I don't divide fractions, so I'm going to multiply by 2 over the root of 3. 2's cancel. I have negative 1 over the root of 3. Can I leave my answer like that? I can't, but I am going to save myself some time here real quick. Notice that cotangent is the reciprocal of that, right? What's the reciprocal of negative 1 over the root of 3? Just negative root of 3. So I got that one taken care of very quickly. And now tangent, I just have to multiply top and bottom by the root of 3. I get negative root of 3 over 3. And that's that. Not too bad, right? Take out your homework. You are going to do the first problem on your own. I'm going to do the second problem with you because it's a little bit different, and you should be able to work from there. When I say your homework, you should be to this spot right here. We're looking at right now. And if you're looking through your homework and wondering what should you be able to complete by now, everything up to this spot. We've done everything. So if you have questions, we can work with it. But go ahead and start with problem number 1, and I'll come around and give you guys a little bit of help. Okay, good work. Most everybody, you were able to list 3/5 right away for sine, and cosecant was then 5/3. As you set it up, you got cosine was 4/5, so secant was 5/4. Notice how it's in quadrant 1, so you know that they're all positive, and we'll work from there, okay? Let's look at number 2 together. What would you do first for number 2? Tangent is 15 over 8. And then 8 over 15. Great. Sine squared plus cosine squared is 1? Yes, no? Sine squared plus cosine squared is 1. Does that help me here? No, I don't have sine or cosine. So I've got to choose a different formula. And I like to choose this one. 1 plus tangent squared is equal to secant squared. That's the formula I like to choose in that situation. I have a tangent. It's going to allow me to come up with secant. So I go to work. 1 plus, and I square tangent. What's 15 over 8 squared? 225 over 64 is equal to secant squared of theta. I'm going to take that 1 and rewrite it as 64 over 64. I'm not subtracting this time. I'm adding. 64 and 225 is 289 over 64 is equal to that secant squared. Square root both sides. I get 17 over 8 is equal to secant of theta, positive or negative. Yes, let's talk about why it's negative. Is tangent positive or negative? Positive. Tangent is positive here and here. Notice how cosecant is less than 0. Sine is negative in the second or in the third and the fourth. So you can see that you have the third quadrant, and that means that the only thing that's positive is tangent. Notice again, these are positive. All the other 4 are negative. And Erin's point that she brought up earlier, if you take a negative divided by a negative, you get a positive. So I have a negative 17 over 8. That tells me that cosine is negative 8 over 17. I can now use sine squared plus cosine squared is 1. What do you get if you square negative 8 over 17? 64 over 289 is equal to 1, or in other words, 289 over 289. Sine squared is, I subtract the 64 and get 225 over 289. Square root sine of theta is positive or negative 15 over 17. Have we already determined the positive and negative? Yep, we've already determined it's negative. And so we have negative 15 over 17. We have negative 17 over 15. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. It should be the square root of negative 15, but I believe negative roots of 15. The rest of the time is yours. You guys have about 10 minutes. It'd be great if you could get problem 3 and 4 done. This is something you need practice with. This is, again, I would say the part that tends to be more challenging for people as they take the test.